Welcome to Cinemophile, where we bring you the best in independent, documentary, and foreign films, and we talk to the people who made them. I'm your host, Mike Caspar, and you can find out more about the program by going to cinemophilepod.com. Amidst the brazen rise of 21st century authoritarianism, few politicians have proven as corrupt and adept at undermining democracy as Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, a hero to his country's Christian conservative population and a role model to the right-wing political movement in Europe and to Donald Trump and Republicans in the United States. Orban takes carefully crafted, methodical steps to chip away at Hungarian democratic institutions while maintaining popularity with the majority of the citizens. This film is really a must-see on so many different reasons and so many different levels. Democracy Noir, it's beautifully done. We're joined today by the director of Democracy Noir, Connie Field. Connie, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Mike. I'm happy to be here.
Such an impressive documentary, and I've been hearing, if you're paying attention in American political trends and influences, Viktor Orban's name has been coming up for about a decade. I'm so glad you pulled the curtain back on his rise to power and the impact he's having, not only on Hungary, but on the European Union. And I think that's a very important part of the story to be told. What put you on to doing this particular project?
And I may add, not just the European Union, but our own country, the United States,
Yeah.
unfortunately. Well, my husband is Hungarian. Okay, so that's really why and how I did the film. We've been going back to Hungary almost every year since 1990. We have lots of friends there. We've been watching things unfold. I started filming actually in 2014. We were in Liberty Square. It's a square that has a statue of Ronald Reagan on one side of it, and on the other side were these four empty pillars surrounded by police and all these demonstrators. So we went to find out what in the world was going on, and I just started filming then. Okay, and what was happening is that Orban was trying to rewrite history. He wasn't trying, he was doing it. And the statue was symbolic of, he was creating a story of how Hungary suffered under Germany during World War II, as opposed to being their ally, which is what the truth is, as opposed to the story where it's the Hungarians that rounded up their own Jews and shipped them straight to Auschwitz. What most people don't know is numerically the country that had the largest number of people killed were Hungarians in Auschwitz, the largest number. People were trying to stop the statue from being erected. They stopped it for 6 months. They created a counter narrative in front of the statue with pictures of the regent of Hungary with Hitler that completely refuted everything that the statue was about. And that display exists today. Still today, people take care of it. Even when people come and tear it down, they build it up again. That means all these people visiting Budapest from other parts of Hungary, from other parts of the world, see this. Because it is, as we notice now, Trump is trying to rewrite history. Okay?
Yeah.
He's trying to
Yeah.
control the way people are being educated. Viktor Orban took control of universities and educations and theaters and everything all over Hungary.
I think that's such an important, you made a number of several important points. One is that I had myself, who I consider myself an educated person, had really kind of forgotten about Hungary's alliance with the Germans. But I do know, and that explains one thing I do know, which was the Hungarian Jews were among the last to be
Mhm.
pushed into the death camps because I assume because of that alliance that the Hungarians had with the Germans. But once they decided to go after the Hungarian Jews, it was some of the most vicious and systematic slaughter of Jews anywhere in Europe. Was in that last. In fact, I heard that they were pulling troops off of the front line in order to get more Jews into these death camps by the end of the war. The Germans were. So, yes, just all those things that you're talking about. I think it's important to understand history and why that's such an egregious reading of history that you just described.
Exactly. So anyway, that's what started me filming. I tried to make a film then, but Hungary was not on people's radar. I couldn't raise money to make it. But when I would film when I would go back, okay? And as I said, we went back a lot in 2020, 21. And in 21 is when I partnered with my producer from Denmark, Sigrid Daker. And it was really that partnership that made this film possible.
You focus on three people, three women. I think it's important to point out that are an integral part of the telling of the story. We have the politician Timea, also Babett
Hmm.
Okay, and Niko and Tal.
And tell,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, and they're also Nico's mom is also prominently featured in terms of a sort of a counter narrative that
Mhm.
most people in Hungary are hearing. She's sort of our stand-in. And the political party, is it called Fidesz? Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Fidesz. So all of these things are, to me, they're the activity of these three women in the film, as well as the conservative party, Fidesz, which is Orban's political party, are really where you zero in on. It's the impact it has on these individuals as well as a bigger picture, but also, quote unquote, the political triumph of Fidesz in this story. Let's talk about how you found the people that you focus on in the film.
Well, I met Nico in 2014, as I mentioned, and we became Facebook friends. So I was
Right,
always
right.
in Nico, and I kind of fell in love with Nico. Plus, she had a unique thing to bring to the story because of her family situation, because her mother was an Orban supporter, because her stepfather tried to get her to join Jobbik, which was a really neo-Nazi party when she was young, and she went in the opposite direction. And because she was someone who's, working class in Hungary, she's a nurse in the public healthcare system.
Right.
So she had a very unique perspective on this. Timea is very feisty, incredibly articulate, a real fighter, and she's in the opposition in parliament. In fact, she came into parliament the same time as Orban did in 2010. And, she was hoping to bring sustainability and human rights and all these things into, the new Hungarian society. And then was hit with Orban taking over everything. She was so articulate in saying exactly what she saw wrong with what he was doing and exactly what the real situation was. It's like with immigration. He made immigrants enemies in Hungary, even though Hungary doesn't really have immigrants. The people from Syria were coming through Hungary to go to Northern Europe. None of them wanted to stay in Hungary, and they did not stay in Hungary. But he made them into the boogeyman, just as he made the EU into the boogeyman. He made George Soros into the boogeyman. He created enemies, and he was going to go fight these enemies and save his society from these enemies. Does this sound familiar?
Yes. Yes, it does. Yes. And that is really the through line in this film, as much as it is the history, political history, the current history of Hungary. You cannot watch this film and not take your mind off of the fact that we are in some version of this transformation ourselves.
Absolutely, because one of the things I wanted to achieve with the film is to clearly show the autocrat's playbook. It's a playbook that you follow, and that's what's happening right now in the United States. Trump is following that same playbook, but doing it actually in a much more violent way than Orban ever did. And we're dealing with the head of our country who's very revengeful. So we have, he's in many ways worse than Orban, I'm sorry to say.
Yeah, well, he has nuclear weapons, where Ban does not. So there's a lot of very important distinctions that need to be made between the two of them. But I just want to quickly remind our listeners we're speaking with Connie Field. She is the director of a terrific documentary film called Democracy Noir, and it's coming out in theaters here in Los Angeles area as well as around the country on September 5th. So
New
be
York,
looking for this.
New York, September 5th,
Okay.
LA, September 19th, Seattle, September 12th, etc.
Okay. We'll have all that information on this on the site as well. So thank you for that. Orban has showed up on my radar when most prominently I'd heard of him. I knew somewhat what he was doing, but when CPAC, the conservative PAC, that has been a fertile ground for truly right-wing, fanatical right-wing Republicans for many, many years, when they had CPAC in Budapest, was when that's really what caught my attention in terms of the importance of him in terms of this very right-wing movement around the world.
Yeah, that's a goal of Orban is to be very important to that world. And he basically has been building this up for years, and the right wing internationally is actually quite well organized.
I'm going to plug another documentary film that I saw a few years ago that it illustrates one piece of the puzzle that we see in this film, and that is the EU, the European Union. Well, Alison Klayman did a wonderful documentary called The Brink, and it was Steve Bannon organizing right-wing money, right-wing um, politicians around the world, including the Russians, to take over or at least cripple the EU's ability to affect European politics. And we see that play out in your film, in Democracy Noir. We see the impact of this attempt to essentially cripple the EU's ability to influence, to have an impact. In this film, Democracy Noir, we see Orban taking credit for EU money that's come into the country and taking the credit for the benefit of that and then vilifying the European Union. So this is a playbook, again, a kind of a Trumpian playbook that we're seeing play out now here in our country. Is that a fair way to put it? Am I describing that
Yeah,
accurately?
again, he's turned the EU into a boogeyman, just like the immigrants were and George Soros were.
Right,
Okay,
right,
when
right,
in fact the EU has been instrumental in keeping Orban in power, much to their chagrin, because it's really their money that he's been able to build things in the countryside for people that they all attribute to him.
right, right.
Okay, and that's so unwittingly they've been doing that. They've been trying to fight him. They withheld money, some of it which they gave back because they needed Orban's vote to support the Ukraine. They needed Orban's vote in NATO to let Sweden in. And to get that vote, they had to give him back some of the money that they withheld from him. Okay, and
Wow.
now the EU is also trying to work out its problems about its also in its founding, papers, more or less, which says that everything has to be unanimous. This gives them no way to move. Okay, so they're trying to change some things that have made them unable to really confront Orban in a useful way. But a lot of what's fueling what's going on in Europe is, in fact, immigration, not in Hungary. In Hungary, immigration is it's a false cause because those Syrian immigrants that I show in the film were just using Hungary as a transit route. They didn't want to stay there and they did not stay there. Hungary doesn't have those kind of immigrants. What Hungary has that's in any way different is they have gypsies, like they have all Roma all over Europe. Okay, it's no different than that in Hungary. But this was completely false
Yeah.
in Hungary. But in the rest of Europe, it actually is a big problem. And it's what's been fueling the right wing takeover of lots of places and countries in Europe. So it's a big thing they have to deal with. Here, I think it's a boogeyman. That's my position because I think basically we don't have that problem. Our country is made of immigrants. My father wasn't even born here. He was actually born in the Ukraine. And the undocumented people who are here in the United States really service our society. They pick our crops. We're going to have things rotting on the vine. Our Americans are not going to take those jobs, and our food prices are going to go sky high. We don't have a huge immigrant problem. Trump and people have just turned them into the boogeyman. And now they're trying to turn the Democratic Party into the boogeyman. That's what Steve Miller is doing. This is a playbook. This is what Orban did. They're doing the same thing. They're copying it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
This is, in some ways, this is as old as authoritarianism in terms of what, dismantling the educational system, making everybody that doesn't agree with them. I think what did Bannon call them the other day? Well, Trump constantly refers to the opposition as scum of the earth.
Viktor Orban says they're a virus.
There is a virus, yeah.
Or
So
they're
all
a
of these, yeah,
virus.
and again, one of the great things about democracy noir is that you lay it out. In some ways, Viktor Orban's authoritarianism is more mature than what's going on here in the United States, in the sense that it's fully functioning, in Hungary than it is here in the United States, at least at this point.
Viktor Orban moved very slowly. And he did this over years. He did it very, 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 very slow. He put things in the constitution. Okay, one of the big problems in Hungary is that in their new constitution that was written in 1990,
Mhm,
they had in this constitution that any party that won two-thirds of the majority in parliament could change the constitution. Big mistake. This is why everything happened in Hungary.
mhm.
Orban was the first one to come in with two-thirds majority, and he completely changed the constitution so that he would maintain complete power. And he's maintained that margin ever since then by controlling elections. So he always wins. And
Okay.
he put things in the Constitution that he hasn't even used yet, Mike. In the Constitution is the rights of the fetus, but he hasn't used that yet in society. You can still easily get abortions in Hungary. So he put everything in that he could potentially use at a later date.
Has anyone within the Hungarian government come out and said anything about you? What's happening, if anything, in that regard?
The Hungarian government certainly has seen the film because they confronted Timea. I think it was at a party actually at the US Embassy, and they even quoted from the film. So somehow they've all seen the film, even though the film is not opened in Hungary yet. But Orban is not Putin. Orban has been able to solidify his power and he hasn't used violence. He hasn't had to put his opponents in jail because he's been able to maintain control. This year, it's going to be very interesting because there's actually a party that's out polling Fidesz, okay, the Tisza party. So it's the first time he's really been successfully challenged. So their elections in 2026 are crucial, just like ours are going to be in
Yeah.
2026.
Well, it's all here. Democracy Noir. There's just such a wealth of not only historic information, practical information, watching the dismantling of a society and reconfiguring it in a way that maintains authoritarian power. It's all here. Congratulations, a qualified congratulations in the sense of, my God, this could be our future too. But this is a warning. You've been warned, people. If you watch this film, you have been warned. So my congratulations to you. I think it's a fantastic piece of work. So
Thank you so much. But it's also the story, Mike, of resistance. They
yes.
never gave up resistance and resisting, and this is crucial. They have like an opposition culture in their demonstration. That's why their demonstrations are so important.
Yeah.
Orban hasn't needed to send in the army and shut down the demonstrations, okay? So they've allowed to have that, and the opposition is very alive. So that when this new party, Tisza, came along and was really rising, there were all the people for it. Oh, I mean, it was incredibly important. So I really find it actually, these women to me were very inspirational.
I'm with you. That's great. That's great to hear. And that does offer, I think, some hope for people here in this country who do want to see our Viktor Orban. We can unelect, or we can unelect the people who are demonstrating fealty to our dear leader at this point. So congrats on the work. Again, Democracy Noir. We've been speaking with the director as well as the producer of the film, Connie Field. Connie, thank you so much.
Thank you, Mike.
You have been listening to Cinemaphile with Mike Kaspar, the place where you will hear from the best in independent documentary and foreign filmmakers. Please check out our previous interviews as well as upcoming interviews and special programming by going to cinemaphilepod.com. We are also available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube, searchable under Cinemaphile with Mike Kaspar. Until next time, thank you for listening.